Welcome to the Tectonic Takes podcast. I am super excited because we have a guest with us today. It's Abram and Ivan as usual, but we are introducing one of our favorite guests this season. She played college soccer at Louisville University in Romeoville, Illinois, where she majored in broadcast journalism. She's a host, a play-by-play analyst on the Pac-12 network, on MLS Next Pro on Apple TV Plus, co-host of the Locked On Dubs Warriors podcast, and most importantly, a host for the San Jose Earthquakes. Please welcome Kylen Mills. How are you doing?
Good to see you, Ivan. Super excited to finally get on the pod. I've listened to it. You guys do awesome work. So glad to be here. That was probably like the longest intro ever for any of your guests. So I do apologize for that. I'm a freelance broadcaster, so it just means I have many roles. So appreciate you throwing all of them in there like that.
Right. And I think that for all of us who have done some form of media coverage, whether it's written, broadcast, podcasts, like we respect the hustle. We understand that a role comes up here, you got to fit in, you got to adapt, and you definitely demonstrate a lot of adaptability through your resume. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. Dude, that's all I'm trying to do is be as versatile as possible. And in broadcasting, that's the name of the game in today's day and age. Like the more you can do for a network and the more roles you can fill, the more indispensable you are. So it's actually been an intentional approach in my career, and specifically in the last year for me in terms of branching out beyond local news, which is how I started in broadcasting, is to be able to be versatile and just fill a variety of different jobs. So, yeah.
all right. So we have a few questions for you to kick things off before we get into talking the San Jose Earthquakes.
Yeah.
What first got you interested into playing and then watching soccer?
Yeah, so I started playing soccer age 3. My parents actually entered me in preschool soccer a year early, so got to start them young. I respect the grind in that regard. But so I just started playing at a young age. Grew up, my parents put me in travel and club ball, at a fairly young age, elementary school, third, fourth grade. And it kind of just escalated from there. I always loved soccer. It's been my number one favorite sport and passion. I did play other sports as well growing up, tennis and basketball through high school as well. But soccer was always my number one love. I idolized the U.S. women's national team growing up. I mean, Brandy Chastain in the 1990s, man, yeah, she was everything. So I had a poster hanging over my bed, and like that was always the dream, was to be on the U.S. women's national team. Unfortunately, at some point, I don't know if it was in high school or exactly when, I kind of realized that dream was dead. I wasn't quite one of the best players in the country, but I was good enough to get a college scholarship. So I was fortunate to be able to play in college and, have done everything possible to stay around the game since then. So I did play one season out of college in the WPSL, which is like a higher level summer league, amateur league, for those who are familiar. Have been involved in coaching, covering soccer. So, it's been a lot of fun. And for me, getting into sports broadcasting was awesome just as an excuse to stay around sports. I mean, like I said, I love soccer, love basketball, love other sports as well. So it's just been really cool to try to combine that and make a career out of it. And so far, so good. So I'm pretty happy. But that's how I first fell in love with soccer. And then, like I said, I've just been trying to come up with any excuse to stay around the game. And so far, it's worked.
Right. And I feel like that's how we connected a little bit because likewise, soccer and basketball are my two favorite sports as
Me too.
well.
Yeah.
Sometimes throughout my life, it was soccer one, basketball two. Other times it was the other. And then like football, a distant third, and then so on and so forth. But it's still pretty cool to be able to connect with people on both those levels.
Yep.
Abram, would you like to ask the next question?
Sure. 1 second. Don't have the. Here we go.
I'll highlight it for you.
Yeah, I mean, you put like you have a huge stack of notes here, and I gotta find the question. So, biggest question from Nestor in the Discord is: if the team invests in a new player, should they prioritize a left wing or a CDM? Also, just
we'll jump into that.
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think about the team as it stands right now?
Yeah, we can jump right into the soccer side of things. Absolutely. Yeah. It's been really fun to watch the Quakes this season. First and biggest thing that comes to mind is a major improvement from 1 year ago. I mean, it's crazy looking at the numbers, the significant increase in terms of defensive efficiency for the Earthquakes. I just think the style of play under Luchi Gonzalez is much more, adaptable to the MLS versus Matias Almeida. And I think that's what we've seen through the early part of the season. I think that, Lucci has done an excellent job of building the right structure for the team. Yes, they want to build out, they want to go forward, and they want to be a team that attacks, but also that does it with structure and with a plan in place. I mean, the best teams in soccer are the ones that are impenetrable in their attack and also in their defense, meaning those transition moments when you are dispossessed, that you can get behind the ball and prevent goals from being scored in counterattack situations. I think big picture, the team has done a great job of that this season. I think there's still maybe one or two pieces missing to make this really like an MLS Cup contending team, but I think they're right there. I think where they're at in the Western Conference right now is pretty indicative of where this team stands. Right now, I believe it's a tie, 4th, 5th, 6th, all those teams right around 27 points. So they're right in the mix. They're in a great position moving into the second half of the season. And I think that where we see them right now is similar to where we're going to see them fall later in the season. Of course, I love to see them climb up a couple spots, continue to get some wins. But I think that it's a fair indication of where the team is at in terms of where they're at in the Western Conference standings. But I think it's been fun to watch this season. I don't know about you guys.
Absolutely, it has been fun for us. And just looking at the teams above us right now, between St. Louis, LAFC, Seattle, and FC Dallas, uh, we can confidently say that, like, while we like where this team is heading, those teams are still better than us, and that's okay, right, Abram?
Of course. I mean, we in a weird way happen to win against teams that are very strong, like LAFC, Seattle, and Philadelphia, and we
Philadelphia.
struggle against some of the weaker teams this season. I can't say why that is, but I mean, I'm happy, and I hope we keep doing that.
Logic. Yeah, that's why. To put into Warriors terms, it was a wild season for them too. They lost to the Magic and to the Hornets too, so it happens.
Yeah. Oh,
Next,
definitely. I mean,
go ahead.
the Earthquakes though haven't been quite as inconsistent as the Warriors. I mean, the Warriors' struggles on the road this season were like insane. So definitely some similarities, but not quite as bad.
Oh yeah, definitely. We'll see if that can turn around as well. So, and the next question I have for you is: who are some of the favorite players that you've had a chance to talk to the San Jose Earthquakes, whether it be for an interview or just conversations? Who's been like just fun to connect with?
In terms of the earthquake specifically, ooh,
Yes.
that's a great question. So two guys who have personalities that I absolutely love. Number one, Jonathan Mensah is like one of my favorite players on the team. I don't know if either of you have gotten to talk to him at all, or just what your experience had been like with him in press situations. But Jonathan Mensah is awesome, great personality, always hanging around, joking around with the staff. Actually, we had a staff match game played at PayPal, like we got to play it in the stadium. Back at the end of April, and Jonathan just like voluntarily came out and took pictures of it and like got like great. He has like one of his big hobbies is taking photos and photography, and he just like voluntarily came out, took photos, stayed the entire time, like got great action shots of everyone in the staff, like immediately came up and like sent them to everyone, was like airdropping them to everyone in the office. And I think that just puts, puts into context what kind of guy Jonathan Mensah is, because I thought that was really cool. Like, you don't have to hang around. Like, they were done with practice. It was after the team had wrapped up, maybe an hour later that we started playing this game. We played for a long time. We played like a full 90-minute match. It was awesome. But like Jonathan just like hung around. We had pizza after, like just a super nice guy. He's got a great personality. One of my other favorites on the team is actually Benji Kikanovic. He is hysterical, super funny in like unsoccer related situations. I encourage anyone to go to our Instagram page, the San Jose Earthquakes Instagram page, and I think it might be on YouTube too. Benji and Jack Skahan did a Portuguese food taste test ahead of Portuguese Heritage Night, and they were honestly hysterical. Like, it was so funny. Benji was joking about things being moist, so I'll just say that. And it was just a lot of, yeah, I know. The word moist just gets people, and he was just playing it up. But he has an awesome personality. So those are two that immediately jump out to me. But there's so many of the guys that are just, they're all really down to earth, really good people if you get to know them behind the scenes. Christian Espinosa could not be a more like humble star in MLS. I mean, you look at the numbers, he's one of the top in the league in terms of goal contributions, top 10 in the league when you combine those goals and assist numbers. And he's just like the most down-to-earth friendly person. So I want to give him a shout out too, because he's great. Love just chatting with him. Just such a big family man. He loves his kids more than anything. So adorable. So those are three that I'm going to call out, but like literally everyone on the team is great to work with on a day-to-day basis. And they're all super cool.
Yeah, so I got a lot of points to read here. I'll let Abram go first.
Just we're very lucky right now. We have a great group of players who seem to really want to do well in this league. They're doing much better than last season. Mensa, especially, is such a cool guy. I don't know how much time you spend at Quick to the stadium. I know that you do follow the games, and I have watched you a lot, and I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
But I was hanging out with some of our Tectonic Takes photographers. We have a great team of photographers here, and he just came out of a room out of nowhere, just like, "Hey, what's up, guys?" And he came, he shook our hands. And I was like, it felt like he was more of a fan of us than we are of him. It was just such a great experience.
Yeah.
Another, can I add in a Jonathan Mensa
Yes.
nugget? Sorry, Ivan, before we move on from this topic or you add your 2 cents. Just this past Saturday after the match, there was like a season ticket holder, a little event where sometimes they'll get exclusive access and things like that. In this particular instance, it was like a selfie meet and greet type of thing with some of the fans right after the game with Jonathan. Literally talked to every single person for like 5 minutes individually each. Kids were like asking him questions, asking for advice, like literally took time to like answer every single question, talk to every single person, was at the stadium till like 11 o'clock. So another testament to how cool he is, like literally so cool with the fans. I'm glad to hear that he's also cool with like media, photographers, like everyone. Like I just feel like top to bottom, like just super genuine guy.
Right. Uh, just two thoughts, since I'll condense my major thoughts. So it is important that we remember that, while we did jump into a little bit with, the transfer window and thinking about the squad,
Yeah.
that we continue to humanize these players, that these are people that they have dedicated their lives to going to miles away from home to compete at a high level, and that they've treated this community so well. So we are thankful for each of them, whether they play every game or not. So that has to be said. And also, what you both indicated, Abram and Kylen, is a reflection on this club culture. It's why players like Christian Espinoza and Carlos Acapo, who English isn't their first language, have felt comfortable enough to try to speak in the press conferences in English, even when it's really difficult to do so. Like, even for me, when Spanish is like my second language, I still feel a little bit nervous answering
Yeah.
questions in Spanish when it's someone I'm not familiar with. So it just goes to show how much they love being here, how much everyone is treating them well, and likewise they've treated everyone well.
100% co-sign on that.
Yeah. So the next question we have here. So since you came to the Bay Area about 3 years ago, what were some of your favorite Bay Area sports moments you got to experience?
All right, so this one's kind of easy. I mean, to be fair, there is a certain team that won an NBA championship that I got to cover. Probably the Golden State Warriors, not just winning the championship, but I actually think the parade was my favorite sports moment. I know there wasn't actually a game being played technically, but it was literally the coolest thing to see. So following the Warriors during that championship run last season in 2022 was unbelievable. It was a really special group of players. The chemistry was palpable. There was just like such a positive, you talk about culture, like there's just such a positive culture and feel inside that building and inside Chase Center. Got to cover, I actually got to go to Boston and cover games 3 and 4, which was awesome. TD Garden, definitely a hostile environment. So it was cool to experience that firsthand. Some of the Draymond Green chants were quite entertaining. But then I think just to have it all culminate in the parade was like the coolest thing to see. I got to go out and cover it live for Con 4 News, where I previously worked. The streets were absolutely packed with people. I mean, just to see all the fans coming together from all walks of life. We talked to people who drove from like Oregon, like people who drove hours and hours and hours just to be there to get to witness it in person, or flew in, but like people who traveled far and wide to get to be a part of it. People from all walks of life. To see the joy from the players was really cool. I know one moment that stood out to me was Klay Thompson, whenever he was able to get off his like bus, float, whatever you want to call it, and like run the streets and get to engage with fans, and he's carrying the trophy. Like he was getting emotional because Klay Thompson is a player who's experienced so much adversity the last couple of seasons with the Achilles tear followed by the ACL tear. So like you could just feel how much it meant to the players, and there was so much emotion because for the Warriors core, this championship did mean more. They flat out said it multiple times. So I think just getting to see the joy and the celebration at that parade and getting to see people from all walks of life come together, like that's what sports are all about. So hands down, favorite experience in the Bay Area regarding sports, even though it's not technically a sporting event.
Yeah, definitely. So I was lucky enough to go to that parade as well in San Francisco, and it's very timely that we talk about this being June, and recently SF had their Pride Parade. So I hope
Yep.
everyone enjoyed Pride Month and the Pride Parade. And when it comes to those settings in San Francisco, once you get past the initial, there's like 500 people like within a 5 foot radius of me. It's so fun and entertaining, right?
Yep. There's plenty of people watching at that parade for sure as
Yeah.
well. But it was fun. The energy was through the roof. It was awesome.
Yeah, there was the 2 level or maybe even 3 level Whole Foods that did a great service to the community. The bathroom lines were long, but we were able to get in and out in a reasonable amount of
That's
time during
awesome.
the parade. Absolutely. So,
That's great.
yeah, the Warriors parades are certainly special. And while San Jose hasn't experienced a MLS Cup parade in the last 20 years, we have had a chance to honor those players that did win the MLS Cup at recent games and fan events. So it is a reminder that even though San Jose Earthquakes are enduring a little bit of a title drought, that there is still that legacy and that history. And you look at all these leagues, MLS, NFL, NBA, there's still a good amount of teams in all these leagues that haven't won anything. So it just makes that special.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's coming. It's coming. You know,
Yeah,
we're getting a little
definitely.
closer. So a lot of positive momentum.
Right. And the last question I have for you before we talk a little bit more about the games is uh, what are your favorite things about the Bay Area or like adjusting to the Bay Area?
Number one favorite thing has got to be the weather, hands down. I'm a Midwest girly, born and raised in the Chicago area, so used to super cold winters. I have moved around quite a bit for my broadcasting career, so I've lived in a couple different states, but by far the Bay Area has the best weather, hands down.
Woo! Yes.
Yeah, so and I'm someone who like I like mild weather, so I live in the peninsula, like not quite all the way down in San Jose, and like I enjoy like 60 to 65-degree weather, especially like when it's 60 and sunny, it feels great. Like to me, like that's like a perfect temperature. Jeans and a t-shirt, light jacket. Like I'm all about the weather here. I will also say just like one of the most beautiful areas in the country, I'm convinced, just because you have the coastline right here. And that's something my husband and I have tried to take advantage of living on the peninsula, is just some of the beautiful hiking, the beautiful sights, like just something I never want to take for granted is like we live super close to the ocean too, specifically where we live. So it's like, I don't know, getting out to just like look out at that and look out along the coastline. There's so many cool hiking spots. We've gotten to explore the North Bay a little bit. So we've tried to cover a lot of ground, but I just think it's one of the most beautiful areas in the country. And I think the weather is great. So, what's not to love aside from, the price tags of pretty much everything? That's been the only big adjustment, is getting used to the cost of living here. You guys, I don't know how people do it. Now, I know that there's been a big boom. So, for people who grew up here, it wasn't this unreasonable, but man, like, oh, the sticker shock never wears off, at least for me. I have friends back in the Chicago area buying houses or their gas and all that. It's like 30% what it is here in the Bay. And I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous. So that's the only really adjustment piece. Otherwise, like, there's not much. I mean, it's been an awesome experience, and I've enjoyed living here for 3+ years. But man, if we just bring the prices down a little bit, that'd be nice.
Yeah. We've been trying to tell them for the last 27 years I've lived in the Bay Area. So, but like,
Yeah.
we'll see. Maybe for my 20th birthday.
All right, there we go.
The gas prices are bad. When I celebrated like it was a goal scored, when I read an article that said Washington now has more expensive gas prices than California. It's like, finally, okay, there we go.
Yes, someone's worse than us. Like, very
Yeah.
sad, but that is a celebratory moment.
Yeah. But what was like your favorite like peak or hike or natural like preserve kind of place that you visited?
Ooh, okay, so that's a tough question because I'm trying to remember all the places that we've gone. But I will say one of our favorite regular spots is Maury Point in Pacifica. If either of you
Ooh.
guys have been there, really beautiful, right on the water. You can like walk right, like it's hard to explain what it is, but it's like literally like out over the water. So you can kind of like look down the coastline either direction, looking north or south. But if you haven't checked it out, Maury Point in Pacifica is like super beautiful. For where me and my husband live, it's like not too far. So that's like one of our regular pretty hikes. You just got to go on a day that it's not, super foggy. So that can be a little bit suspect. But aside from that, like on a clear day, It's unbelievably beautiful, like looking down at the beach, the coast. You can look up towards San Francisco and kind of see some of the skyline up there. It's unreal.
Sorry. Yeah, Abram, do you have a favorite spot?
I mean, yeah, for more of the West Bay people, I used to grow up. I used to live in Hayward, and there was a park called Garand Park. You guys probably not familiar, but that place is special to me. But that's just an insider for people who live in and around Hayward.
All right, I'll have to add that to the list.
For sure, yeah, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's not like
The,
over the ocean view, but like just like they take such good care of that park. You can ride horses there. It's really beautiful.
Love it. So getting out to the East Bay more is on our list, like my husband and I, in terms of doing is now exploring the East Bay. Because like I said, because we're in the peninsula, we've covered like a lot of ground there. We have gone to the North Bay a couple times now. Like we need to explore East. It's just always so
Yeah,
hot in the summer, man. You drive an hour east, all of a sudden it's like 100 degrees. I'm like, what happened? It was 62 in the peninsula, at least the
yeah.
north half of the peninsula. What
Livermore
is this?
wineries. If you want the wine in Livermore, you got to deal with the heat.
Right.
For me, my favorite spot is the Marin Headlands. You get a nice view of
Oh,
the
yep.
Golden Gate Bridge.
We went there. Yep.
Nicole and I were out there last summer. We're going to try to go back at some point this summer. It's really nice. Sometimes it gets a little bit foggy, but it's still a really nice place to be, to just enjoy the natural scenery and just walk around.
Love it. So we've been there too, and that was a beautiful spot as well.
Yeah. So we talked about something very beautiful about the Bay Area's natural scenery, not about something less beautiful, the week that was.
What a segue. What a segue, Ivan. 10 out of 10.
Thank you. But yeah, I wish I didn't have to make it. So we endured probably the most crushing defeat of the season, the 4-1 loss to the Houston Dynamo, and in a very rainy, or as Benji Kikanovich would say, moist evening. And then for the Saturday game, we were hoping for a better performance. We got that, but it was still 2-1 loss to St. Louis City. So, Abram, what were your initial thoughts?
Against St. Louis, I don't. I think that this scoreline kind of flattered St. Louis. I mean, I do think that they deserved both those goals, but uh, you know, um, I thought that after we kind of shook off the rust or whatever it was that was plaguing us, maybe they were still feeling the heat stroke from when they were in Houston just a few days prior. Um, uh, Whatever it was, doesn't matter. We started attacking way better, and unfortunately, we weren't able to get the goal to equalize, and we lost our home winning streak, which is very unfortunate. But I did, I liked the inclusion of Tommy Thompson and Nico Shakiris later in the game. I thought that it was great to see Nico get some meaningful minutes and not just like it wasn't just throwaway minutes. We brought him on to impact the game in a way that we don't believe others could. And I do think that he made a lot of chances for himself, and he just turned 18, and he's one of our brightest stars, and I'm super glad that he's getting to show what he can do.
All right. Yeah, that sounds about right with my assessment on the minutes distribution, especially for Nico Sekiris. My initial thought was like we made 5 substitutes and they did make a difference collectively, but I felt like who of these 5 players could be that game changer off the bench when we need them when we are at full strength? And that answer could be Nico Sekiris based on how he's done so far. So your initial thoughts on those last 2 games, Kylen?
Yeah, can I just piggyback off your point about Nico? Because I think specifically that's definitely a name that pops up ever since these last 3 matches where we've seen him get some time. I mean, I think the future is bright for him. I love that he's been playing, he's good in combination play, but he's also fairly confident in playing direct and like dribbling the ball, at his when he has it at his feet, like pretty directly up the field and getting it up with pace. He's crafty. You can see some creativity. He's very dynamic on the ball. And then, like I said, I think he's been good generally in combination play. So it's been a lot of fun to watch him. I would have liked to see him come in a little bit earlier in this last matchup against St. Louis City. I was expecting him to come off the bench sooner, especially because it looked like Jamiro Montero got banged up on that goal that he scored. He looked like he wasn't 100% after that. So I was anticipating Nico was going to come on much sooner. So I would have liked to see him even get more time. And moving forward, I think that he needs to be a key piece off the bench, because one area for growth for this Earthquakes team for sure is the bench depth and players coming in and making an impact. I think that they still have been waiting for that person to really come and step in and make an impact in terms of putting balls in the back of the net or getting on the score sheet with assists. I don't think any people, any of the subs coming in or players who had to step in the starting lineup have done poorly. I think a lot have played well, but it's a matter of who's going to be the difference maker. It was such a luxury just a couple seasons ago when the Warriors could bring in someone like Wando or a Shea Salinas in off the bench to provide the instant punch of offense. Yeah, I think maybe that's a lot to expect, but still, you do look at some of these other clubs, and even like St. Louis, inserting a bunch of, players who aren't typically starters into the lineup, and they find the back of the net. So to me, like, that's the next step that I want to see from the Quakes in terms of depth, is some of these players who are coming in making that impact in terms of getting on the score sheet. I thought Jack Skahan getting his first start played well. I thought he was very solid. His pressure did play a factor in that goal that was scored because he had slid middle and stepped up to where Jackson Ewell was able. His pressure allowed that turnover for Jackson Ewell that led to the ball he slotted forward towards Jamiro. So I do want to give him some credit for playing well, but, he didn't take a shot. He didn't, have any super direct chances for himself. And that's where I just feel like I want to see a little bit more, whether it's Jack, whether it's Benji, Tommy Thompson has played on the wing at times, whether it's Nico. I mean, you can look at a big group of players who've gotten some minutes coming in off the bench or have gotten to step into the starting lineup with Cade Cowell off with the U.S. men's national team or U20 national team. Now, who's going to take that next step and, be that player that actually provides that spark that leads to a goal? I mean, that's the next thing I'm looking for in terms of the depth and play from the second unit or from the subs.
Yeah, so when I want to bring in a game changer this summer off the bench, perhaps, or even compete with the starters, the reason why I want that is to take a little bit pressure off of these young players and players playing out of position that are trying to adjust to these roles and step up, and they have. But then when you have this player who has done it, at this level, be it MLS or a comparable league, to come in and they can guide them, and then that just gets that extra lift. And I know from a player perspective, the math checks out. Another player comes in, gets minutes, they're taking away minutes from someone else. But ultimately, it's a collective goal here. And I don't feel like anyone's necessarily been frozen out. So it's still going to be a lot of opportunities with the remaining 14 or so games in MLS, the 2+ games we'll play in Leagues Cup, and then going forward for anyone who is able to contribute to get the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah,
I think there's still going to be plenty of windows for players to step up.
definitely. So we're going to go into our first community question, and then we'll go into our player of the match discussion. So Hameen wants to know, with Kate Cowell currently unavailable, how can the Quakes generate more shots on target? Abram, do you have an idea?
So the way Lucci likes to play is, it's a 4-3-3, and Yule and Montero are kind of dual eights. Montero, we know, is a player who likes to be a 10, but he's been more reserved and doing more defensive work. And I wonder if it would be worth it to kind of sacrifice some of that defensive work rate and then let him be more in the center and behind Jabo, and kind of give him license to create. But I do feel like Nico had that license against St. Louis, and that was what enabled him to be able to make those chances and make himself known on the field. So I think if we, can work out the midfield situation to better support our forwards, and I think we'll probably see more goals.
All right, Kylen.
So wait, the question again was how do the Quakes create more shots on target or chances on frame? Is that what the question was?
Yeah, generate more opportunities, shots on target, because there's no one for one substitute with Cade Cowell. He has
Yeah.
a unique talent set
Hmm.
that no one else can bring, so we have to play a little bit differently.
Yeah, I will say that one thing I thought was interesting, and it's something that Quakes could look at moving forward, is trying out a 4-4-2. That's not something that I'm opposed to, depending on the opponent, depending on kind of what the tactics you're up against are. So that's one thought that crossed my mind. But outside of that, I just think in general the Quakes have to get more generation from the left side. They have to get more production. I know something that Christian Espinosa has talked to me about is that he feels like him and Jeremy also need to do a better job making runs off the ball. But for him, he feels like it's gotten to the point where defenses are absolutely zeroing in on those two and almost leaving the left side. He said it's very apparent that defenses are focused on shutting down Christian, and they're focused as well on shutting down Jabo, not letting him receive balls easily with his back to goal and distribute, like he wants to. He's not getting shots off easily. So to me, it needs to be an individual effort from the left side. Could the Quakes bring someone in as a left winger, something they could target in terms of making an addition to the roster? Maybe that's the best bet at this point. But I just think it's a matter of figuring out how to get something going on the left side. I think that one major positive is having Miguel Trauco on the left, and I think maybe giving him more, and he already gets into the attack, as it is, but I think, more involvement from him in terms of getting forward. And he's a player who just has a world-class strike, as we've seen, world-class technical abilities and touch. So I love the moments when we're able to see him get forward. And that's something that Lucci wants to see from his outside backs, is that they are aggressive in getting into the attack. So maybe utilization of Miguel Trauco, in addition to Carlos Acapa. I know that those two are both back from international duty. But outside of that, it's just a matter of figuring out how to get something going on the left side. To me, that's the biggest key, because you can't just let defenses zero in on Christian. It's going to be incredibly difficult for him to create the way he created the first half of the season, because he's being headhunted at this point. So who's going to come in and step up on the left side? To me, it's got to be an individual effort at this point, versus, like, I try to think about tactics. And I like the idea about giving Jamiro more freedom in the attack. And also, Jamiro's a player who I think it's kind of interesting in that, whether you want to call it a dual 8 or a 10 role, he gets super wide, which I feel like sometimes maybe is a disservice to him, not being in the center of the pitch for certain moments, because he does help spread the field as well. I don't know. It's a catch-22. I'm not sure how I feel about it. But that's one thing that has always stood out to me, is that for a 10, you see him in the flanks a lot. But I don't know. Like I said, I just feel like an individual effort on the left side is more of what I'm looking for. We saw Cade Cowell come back from U20 World Cup, and I feel like he made such an impact just because he was being aggressive from the left side. Defenses suddenly have to shift, be able to handle his speed, the physicality and the pressure that he was putting in similar to Nico, really being pretty confident in just driving balls either, towards the end line and sending him across, or even cutting middle and trying to create goal scoring chances. I thought that he came back from the World Cup really confident and aggressive. And it made me realize, how much he does bring, just because it forces the defense to stay honest. And I thought there was some shift when he came back in terms of how teams were defending the Quakes. Now, without him, I think an individual needs to step up. Did they add someone to the roster? Who on this roster right now is going to be that player? To me, I keep looking for Benji to make that, be that difference maker who comes in off the bench. We saw him score last season. We know he can do it. It's just like bringing that out or finding a way to really ignite him. So that's something that maybe, Luchi Gonzalez needs to try to sort out in terms of, is there a way as a coaching staff to get Benji going? Because he's a player that I do feel like has the talent to produce and just hasn't been. So what's led to that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Lucci gets paid the big bucks. So, that's one that he can hopefully answer or figure out.
That was some brilliant analysis and thoughts there. Regarding a 4-4-2, the question is, who would be that striker up top with Bobasi? I feel like the closest thing we have to a natural second striker potentially could be Benji Kikanovic, because he started his MLS career as a forward and then he shifted into a wing role. But then, like, you also look at potential options. Maybe Cade could play some time as striker, maybe Useni Buddha. But it's definitely interesting, a lot to think about. And that also kind of answers a question from David Kurtz, who was wondering why this team can't score more than one goal per game. And as you mentioned, Kylen, defenses across Major League Soccer are headhunting Christian Espinoza. They're putting more pressure on Jeremy Abobasi. They're not allowing Emir Montero to play with his back to the goal and create. So with those three key players being more and more figured out, and the other one, Cade Cowell, being in and out of the lineup because he's doing too well in a way for the Quakes perspective. Of course, we want all our players to represent national teams whenever they get the opportunity, but you get what I mean, is something that we have to continue to adjust to. And it's a similar adjustment period that other teams have had to make, such as our opponent, St. Louis. They've adjusted very well without Joao Klaus and Edward Lewin. And now they've gotten great production out of Nicholas Gioacchini, Samuel Adeniran, and many other of their talented roster. And one of the lineup note I want to mention, and this was the other community question that Hameen provided, is what to expect regarding Rodriguez's loan deal. So it's set to expire this July. And the most recent news I was able to find about this was from MLSsoccer.com writer Jonathan Siegel. He is confident that San Jose and Gremio come to an agreement to at least extend the loan toward the end of the season because of how well that he has thrived under Lucha Gonzalez and formed a partnership with Jonathan Mensah during Nathan's long-term absence. I don't know anything else beyond that. We're hopeful that's the case. It's a very peculiar situation because in the Brazilian Serie A, like MLS, that we run primarily during the summer rather than an August through May calendar. So that's a very interesting loan situation to look at, and Gremio could go either way on that. But we really hope he stays around.
Yeah, I hope that Rodriguez stays. I think the Earthquakes certainly will pursue extending him. I think that he's been a great fit in the back line. One thing to note is Jonathan Mensah and Rodriguez have a great relationship. They've really developed a chemistry. Certainly no back line is perfect in terms of their moments on the field, but there is a sense of cohesion amongst the group. They've done an excellent job in terms of, having a couple different outside backs playing, with the international duty even recently, having a couple of switches with, Grazo and Judson while Grazo is out. So I just think this is a group that, has handled those changes well because there is a good chemistry and a good cohesion amongst the back line. So you'd hate to take anyone out of that role. And I think Rodriguez has really stepped in well this season. And, you look at the defensive numbers and, to me, that tells the story. I don't know after this last match, I would have to look, but I mean, before this past match, and last week was such a rough week in terms of the Quakes giving up goals, but before that, they were on pace to concede nearly half the goals of last season. So, to me, that tells you that there is something to be said for the defensive effort and the pieces that are in place back there. So I'm sure there'll be every intent to keep him around.
Right. I continue to reiterate that there is improvement. And I feel like for a long time, Quakes fans have been around a decade plus. They've seen the highs and lows. And in particularly these last few seasons, they've seen spells of improvement. And maybe there's a part of them that's a little bit concerned and thinking that there's going to be a drop off at some point. And who knows? We lost 2 games in a row. That's a valid point for concern. I wouldn't call it a drop off yet. But it's the process that's going to continue to regain the fans' trust and to continue to get more buy-in. But I do agree with you that we got to look at the bigger picture and appreciate what we have seen so far in that improvement. And we're going to do some more appreciation because now we have to pick a player of the match. So we're going to focus on the St. Louis game. We have 3 nominees. We have Emir Montero scoring his first goal of the MLS season. We have Daniel, another solid performance in goal. And then we had the spark plug off the bench, Nico Securius. So, Kylen, why don't you go first? Who's your pick?
Ooh, that's tough. I think I'm gonna have to go with Daniel, and I don't know if this is lame because I feel like he's been the player of the match for the last 2-3 weeks since he got inserted back into the starting lineup. But he is just making ridiculous saves. I just feel like night in and night out, the Quakes are coming in, and you look at he's been top 5 in the league in terms of being below XG because of the saves he's making. He was named to the man of the match. Not obviously the Houston game, but the week before that. So whatever match day that was last weekend for his performance against Philadelphia. And to me, he's just making insane saves. It seems like he's made the transition super comfortable now between the pipes for the Quakes. And I just I don't even know how to put into words the saves that Daniel's making. You're just how did you just get a hand on that? that's ridiculous. There was one in this game that ended up being offsides, but at the time, the double save, I was just like, oh my God, how did he do that? I feel like I'm saying that every game. So to me, it's got to be him. I was glad to see Jamiro get his first goal of the season. I thought he played well, but I just feel like Daniel's been so rock solid, and he's a big reason why the Quakes were able to come up with the upset win against Seattle. It just seems like time and time again he's come up with the big stops. You mentioned beating a quality Philadelphia Union side. I can't say enough about his play during this last stretch of games.
All right, Abram, who's your choice?
I mean, before Colin got here, Ivan and I were kind of going back and forth between Nico and Montero. Colin's kind of swayed me to Daniel.
Okay,
And it's
interesting.
weird to say a goalkeeper who conceded 2 goals being man of the match, but that's just a testament to how good he has been. We would have conceded a lot more. That double save was one of the best saves I've seen in PayPal Park, and I've been a good fan for a while. Um, yeah, he's been great. We all collectively owe him an apology. There was way too much criticism thrown his way at the beginning of the season, but he has brushed that off completely. I don't know if it's because he doesn't know English yet, but he's just been proving how important he is to the team and why we spend money to bring him in and spend an international slot on a goalkeeper.
Yeah, and the more I thought about it as well. So Jamiro Montero was essential to getting off to that first half start and then the early second half where he got the goal. And then Nico Sakiris kind of took the baton from him and then was able to carry on in that midfield duties. So they both did very well during their respective stages of the match. But because from 1 minute to 90 minutes, Daniel was phenomenal. I think we could make a clean sweep and give it to Daniel again. And maybe it's the safe choice, maybe it's the boring choice,
No.
but it's the right choice.
That's exactly it. The right choice.
Yeah. So ultimately, it is deserving of praise. Daniel's definitely deserving of praise. And that point about players adjusting and maybe not speaking the language right away, it seems to be more of an issue. I feel like in the Premier League, which is also a very culturally diverse and linguistically diverse league, and some fans care about that more than others there. But honestly, I don't care if you come here, you don't speak a word of English. If you play soccer, you play well, and you're giving your best shot. That will come, and you deserve the fan support. It's tough coming to a new environment and trying to adjust. But this is what soccer is, and this is what sports is now. You look at every professional league, maybe not so much NFL, but every other league, NHL, NBA, MLB, you have two, three, four different languages in those locker rooms, even more so in soccer. So that should never be a reason to discount a player. And hopefully, fans that had that mindset can kind of move past that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I mean
So,
his saves are universal. You don't have to speak any language to see that should have gone in, but it didn't because this guy's amazing.
a stop sign is red in an octagon in any part of the world.
Right.
There we go. So, quick word on the Gold Cup. So, we had a few matches started already. We saw USA salvage a 1-1 draw against Jamaica while we were watching the Quake St. Louis game. That game was playing over for us in the media room. And it was definitely a roller coaster of emotions. Matt Turner made a big save on Liam Bailey's penalty, and Kate Cowell played for about 35 minutes. And then yesterday we saw Mexico have their best win in a while and their first win under the new manager being Honduras 4-0. So, Kylen, any early thoughts on the Gold Cup for you?
My early thoughts are that I need to run and grab my laptop charger really quick. So I'm going to toss this to you guys to chat Gold Cup. Give me 2 minutes. I just want to plug this in before it dies. Sorry.
No,
Gold Cup, though. More Cade Cowell. Woo.
yes, definitely more Cacao. I want him to start against St. Kitts and Nevis.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Give me two
Abram, your
seconds.
thoughts?
I agree 100% with Helen. Kate Cowell is probably the only reason I'm following this tournament. Obviously, I do love to see USA do well, but Kate Cowell is a great player. We all carry him in our hearts, and we're going to continue doing so. If he were to leave this team, which is a possibility if he does well in this tournament. What do you think, Ivan?
I think that I'm going to give you and our listeners a few more reasons to watch the Gold Cup. And two of them play for the Oakland Roots. Brian Tamakis representing El Salvador and Nabil Hackshaw representing Oakland Roots and Trinidad and Tobago, obviously Oakland Roots. So definitely that will be a reason to watch some other games that may not involve the USA and Mexico. But also there's some young MLS talent that is coming through in this Gold Cup roster. I know Aiden Morris had a rough first game against Jamaica, but he's 21 years old. He's now cap tied. He could have went to either USA or Canada, and now he's in the fold here. We'll see if he and James Sands could develop into those options at center defensive midfielder behind Tyler Adams. As much as I hate to say it, Carson's Jalen Neal might be a solution to that depth problem at center back for the U.S. men's national team. Jalen Neal's fantastic. He's done well for himself so far for MLS, and he did impress when he came off the bench in the USA game against Jamaica. And it's nice to see guys like Brandon Vasquez, FC Cincinnati. Shout out to our friends over at Soccer Crush Podcast. I know they're excited to see him play, and Matt Miazga. But it's an interesting roster. Canada as well are going to be exploring who they have without Davies and David on that roster. And it's a new look Mexico as well, under a new manager, some familiar faces like Luis Chavez, but also some other faces like Luis Romo getting to star with the brace against Honduras. So this Gold Cup is still going to be pretty interesting, even if the Nations League is looking like the primary tournament between the heavy hitters of CONCACAF. This is still a very important competition for those heavy hitters to explore the depth of their teams and to compete for a title, and also for the rest of the confederation to get some competitive matches. For many Central American and Caribbean teams, they don't get that luxury to schedule friendlies as regularly as USA and Mexico do, especially the very smaller nations. So the Gold Cup does provide guaranteed at least 3 competitive matches so that they can evaluate their talent pool. And a lot of these teams can continue to evolve. Jamaica underwent a huge evolution when it came to being able to recruit many dual nationals who played in the Premier League and in the lower divisions of England. And they're looking very strong too. So yeah, the Gold Cup will still be looking forward to. We'll talk more about the Women's World Cup once Kylen is back. But now let's talk about LA Galaxy. I was hyping everyone up, thinking like, okay, this will be an entirely LA Galaxy podcast. But we're 47 minutes into this, and now we're going to preview that game. So let's get into our community question from KDSJ88. Who's the player to watch for the Galaxy? And of course, we're going to know, I'm sure everyone already knows, Javier Hernandez is out for the season, and Martin Caceres is going to be out for at least 3 months as well. But there's still some options that we got to look out for. Abram?
I mean, yeah. Puig is a good player. I love watching him, but I hate playing against him because he's such a dangerous player. He has a thing that players who come from like an elite background, like Barcelona, have, where they find a way to get on the ball all the time. Like he's constantly in the middle of it and making something happen. I'm obviously glad that Chicharito won't be playing. It is unfortunate. We never like to see a season-ending injury, especially to a Mexican legend. But it is fortunate for the Earthquakes going into the next match. However, they do have a good backup in Joveljic, who we don't talk about enough, is 100% a MLS quality striker who could be leading the lines for them if Chicharito never ends up coming back. They will have no problem, with him as their main striker, in my opinion.
I think Joveljic not only is an MLS quality striker, but if he continues to score this many goals, important goals, being reintroduced into matches or introduced into matches, or and scoring right after that introduction, then he's going to get more chances with the Serbian national team. He scored a goal against Serbia, no, against Jordan for Serbia. So Jovalic is a player that's not just getting attention from Galaxy fans and MLS fans. They're getting attention from the same country that celebrated their star player winning an NBA championship earlier this month. So do not underestimate any Serbian. That's the moral of the story there. So yeah, Jovalic is a player to watch. Another player to not underestimate is Douglas Luiz, who had a assist in a recent Galaxy game. So it's been a rough start for his MLS career, Douglas Luiz, but this guy is a winner. He won nothing but titles at Bayern and Juventus. He doesn't just forget how to win just because he's at LA Galaxy. So
You mean Douglas Costa?
Douglas Costa. Did I say Douglas Luiz? Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry. That's a
Hello, player.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Douglas Costa. I'm sorry. Douglas Luiz is also a great winner. He had a really good season with Aston Villa, but we're thinking about Douglas Costa here. So the question for you, Kylen, is who's a player that you're intrigued to watch from the LA Galaxy?
That's a good question. I mean, the obvious person to watch out for is Ricky Puig because I think he's the most dynamic person left in the attack. But honestly, I haven't watched much of the Galaxy since they lost Chicharito. So, I mean, my question is who's going to step up in this attack? And now we just learned the news about Martin Caceres. That's devastating for the Galaxy defense. It's already been bleeding goals. Now they lose one of their veterans, a player with World Cup experience. So I wonder how this back line is going to play out. I mean, rather than an individual player, I mean, I do think Ricky Puig is the most dynamic. I just think in general, I'm expecting the Galaxy to sit back quite a bit in this game and just try not to give up goals. Like, I'm expecting them to come out in a low block. They're going to be on the road. They're short numbers. Like I said, this is a defense that has struggled. And they're a team that likes to possess, obviously, if anyone's watched them even for 5 minutes. But I think they're going to play a little bit more conservative in this game. So I don't expect to see a ton of, like I said, offensive risks, I guess, or attacking risks being taken, or a lot of, I think they're going to try to get something going on a counterattack, and I think they're going to sit in a low block against the Quakes and, try to take a point or escape with 3 on some type of counter situation. So that's what I'm watching for from the Galaxy. In terms of an individual, I don't know if there's one person I'm really excited to watch. It's terrible to say, but
That's a good answer, though, with Puig. And we mentioned Jovalic earlier. He just came back from international duty with Serbia. He
he's
scored a
been
goal
good.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There, another player in the attack that you can look out for is Tyler Boyd. He was once, in the U.S. men's national team pictures, and he's got some experience playing in Turkey. But the center back situation is going to be big for LA Galaxy. So they're down Caceres. Jalen Neal's in the Gold Cup roster. So we're probably looking at a center back partnership of Sega Koulibaly and Chris Mavinga, which are both good players. Usually one of them is starting with someone else rather than the two of them starting together. So that's going to be interesting. And then, of course, the goalkeeper. The name's Bond, Jonathan Bond. He always plays like freaking James Bond against us. So we got to be accurate with our shots. I feel like I say that with all the keepers we face, but it's been accurate. We've recently played against Andre Blake and Roman Berkey and a guy that's in the clean sheet leader race with Steve Clark for Houston Dynamo. So we're facing some pretty good goalkeepers coming up here. And for the Galaxy, it's been a tumultuous season for them. The fans have not been happy. They've wanted Chris Klein out. They got Chris Klein out. We'll see if that changes anything for them. With the Galaxy, you never know. They're always a team in MLS that they could transform over the course of a summer transfer window. I'm sure they're not happy that Messi is not coming to LA, although, signs were there that it was likely going to be Miami and Beckham that would get Messi there. But they're used to being the people that get the Beckham, the Donovan, the Keane, those types of players, Steven Gerrard. And they still have some star power. Douglas Costa, of course, is a notable player, but it's going to be a new adjustment. And I feel like that's where a lot of these long-term MLS veteran teams, Galaxy that's been in the class of 96 with the Quakes and a few others, that we've had to adjust. We can't just be doing the same things we've always been doing because Atlanta United, LAFC, FC Cincinnati, and now Inter Miami in St. Louis are rewriting the rules. So, what do you think about how Galaxy's mentality is going into this? Because they do have a bit of an edge that they did beat us at Dignity Health Sports Park, but of course, they're still nowhere where they want to be in the table, Kylen.
Yeah, well, that's why I said I mean, I think the mentality for them is going to be more protecting a point than I think necessarily being super aggressive and getting a ton into their attack and going after 3 points. I think they'd be happy if they were able to score in a counter situation, but like I said, I just expect them to be a little bit more conservative. You mentioned the center back pairing going to be a little bit shaky. This is a team that is down a couple players in terms of their most important pieces. I mean, those are two huge injuries: an ACL tear and then 3 to 5 months with another left knee surgery for Caceres, and then obviously the ACL tear for Chicharito. I mean, I just think this is a club that is down and out. You look at what's happened regarding everything going on with the front office and the fans, and it's just it's a doomed season to me for LA. So I think they're going to come in knowing they're going to come into a tough road environment. And I think that they're going to look to protect the point. I mean, like I said, I just think we're going to see them play more conservative and play in a little bit of a more lower block and like I said, take a little bit less risks. So I think the mentality for them would be to walk away with the tie. They've actually tied their last 3 straight matches. So that also just goes to show they just played Colorado Rapids to a 0-0 tie. I think it was a 1-1 tie before that. I was looking back through a couple of their last, highlights as well, and it seems like that also may be a product of, losing Chicharito and some of the injuries maybe that have happened. But they've also had a couple of low-scoring matches that were ties as well, and I think they realize that going up, they're going to be in a tough environment. Stanford Stadium isn't just a regular environment either. Like, you're talking about 40,000 fans on the road. This is a Quakes team that's going to be hungry to get back on track and to get that bounce back win. So that's why I expect this to be a, hey, let's get a point. If we could somehow squeak out 3 on a counter or transition opportunity, we'd be happy to do so. But I don't know that they're going to come out playing super aggressive or like pressing super high or anything. I expect to see that from the Quakes, though. On the other side, I think the high press and trying to really force LA to give up the ball, which they like to do, because I think they're going to be fine just possessing. Like I said, I just don't expect them to take a lot of risks in the attack.
I honestly won't be disappointed if it's a 1-0 scoreline. Obviously, if the Quakes are the beneficiaries of that, because you look at the history of Stanford Stadium when they were one of the host cities of the 1994 World Cup. One of the most iconic games, USA versus Brazil, was only 1-0 Brazil, unfortunately, but it was still pretty iconic.
Yeah.
So to give a bit more positive Martin Caceres vibes, I want you both to guess. We'll start with Abram. Abram, how many different clubs has Martin Caceres played for?
Oh God. Okay, so I know you played for Juventus for a long time. Uh, I would say okay. We'll say five.
5? Okay,
Five.
Kylen.
I don't know if I should go higher or lower, but I'm maybe going to go higher. I don't know. I mean, he is a veteran, so I'm going to say 7. I feel like it's got to be more than 5, right?
If you double that, Kylen, you would have been very close. The answer is 13.
Wow.
So let me just list them off for you. Defensor, Villarreal, Recreativo, Barcelona, Juventus, Sevilla, Southampton, Hellas Verona, Lazio, Fiorentina, Cagliari, Levante, and Carson. That's 13 teams.
That is actually crazy. I had no idea. I know he's been around the block, but that's a lot.
Yeah. If you want to get very technical, 14 Uruguay U20, but I just was doing club teams. But there's always someone that likes to be like, well, actually.
It's always one person. You covered
and
all the ground,
I'm a big nerd when it comes to trivia. It doesn't matter if it's soccer, Pokemon, basketball. Like I find things to be very nerdy about when it comes to trivia, and I had to go for it. It's just a very fun stat. And our last community question, Bitcoin89 asks, what types of things should Quakes address before the Carson game? So do you think there's any lingering things that we didn't really talk about the Quakes style of play, or you want to reiterate a point you made earlier, Kylen, of what's something that you think you want to see them focus on if you had a little bit of binoculars into training? which you do because you kind of work for the Quakes, but
Yeah, so I kind of do. In terms of what they actually work on in training, though, like that's a mystery to me. I mean, I think it's so fascinating because when you look at players at this level, and it's interesting because I've worked a lot with the Quakes 2 team as well, and their head coach, Dan DeGear, who's doing an awesome job. Like at the second team level, you have the opportunity to actually develop and grow players, but like once you get to MLS, you're expected to be a finished product. Like you aren't
Mhm.
working on getting players better at any certain skills. It's more of figuring out how to adjust your tactics to get the best out of your players, how to get those players to learn your system, to plan tactically for the team you're going to face that week, and figure out what the best way to attack that team and based on their system. So I do think it's interesting. I would assume it, like I said, it changes week to week just based on what
Yeah.
you're up against and what the scouting report shows. I know film is a super important aspect of Quakes training and any of the MLS organizations and professional sports teams. I mean, that's what it's all about: film study and trying to figure out how to break down your opponent. So that's what I always wonder. I'm like, what do you work on in training? Like I said, obviously as the game gets closer, you have a scout team out there. You try to walk through the principles you want to execute. But I think for me, one of the biggest things I think the Quakes need to execute just in terms of the Galaxy and just moving forward this season. Um, I thought the first half was disappointing against St. Louis City SC. I thought the Quakes weren't sharp in their passing. They weren't necessarily connecting as well as they have in other games. And I don't think they started as strong with as much energy as they have in other games. To me, the Quakes are really efficient and are at their best when they set the tone early by coming out in their high press, really putting other teams under, and they create goals early. Like to me, when the Quakes have been able to score in the first 15, 20 minutes, like and come out with that energy and really set the tone in the game, I think that they make it so much easier for themselves going down the stretch. That's, I guess, the biggest thing I want to see. And I think they've been really successful in terms of coming out with energy and then pressing high and holding that high line. I think we've seen a great defensive work rate from all of the Earthquakes attackers and from this lineup from the top down, not making it easy for teams to build out the back, and especially a team like you're looking at the Galaxy, but a lot of teams in MLS that, are also looking to play possession style, are looking to build out the back, to draw you out of shape. I think that if you don't make it easy on them and you find those right moments to press, the right moments to put them under, box them into one side of the field or the other, and then you get those turnovers high up the field, you set yourself up into good goal scoring situations. So to me, I feel like coming out, setting the tone, high energy, high press is what I think is going to be a recipe for success for the Quakes moving forward. Obviously, yes, you have to adjust some tactics based on your opponents, but I just feel like when we see them come out with that energy and the intentionalness, the intentionality to hold the line really high early in the game and to really put teams under, I just feel like they set the tone and they find themselves more successful down the stretch. The other key piece is also finishing games too, though. So I feel like the beginning and the end of games right now are what I'm watching for from the Quakes. Couple of rough stretches in terms of giving up stoppage time goals. We saw throughout the month of May. The Quakes figured it out. For example, getting a big win and weathering the storm against Philadelphia is a team that pops into mind. But a couple of their last couple matches where they're able to close out. Seattle put a lot of pressure on San Jose. That's one where you give a lot of credit to Daniel, but still where the back line has been able to withstand that pressure. And been able to close out games cleanly. Like that's still an area that I think needs to be a focus for this group, is making sure that they're staying really sharp in those final moments of the match. In terms of closing out matches as well, when they're trying to protect the lead, sitting in a low block, but not too low of a block. I think one area where we've seen the Quakes be more successful down the stretch is when they do find moments where they can possess and get the ball up the field. You can burn down clock when you're in possession and not be so worried about giving up goals. Can you get it to the corner flag even, kill some time, whatever the tactics may be. But I just feel like sometimes they've sat back so much late in games that they're just weathering shot, and they're weathering pressure. You can't just hunker down for 20 minutes and not expect to get scored on. Like you still have to have some type of ability to get into at least a middle block, to get the ball up the field, to get some possession. And I think they've done a better job of that through these last couple matches when they have been able to close out. Obviously, like, Houston, that was just a whole different story. This last match, they just unfortunately couldn't come up with an equalizer late in the game despite pressing. But I think protecting the lead when they do have leads or they do have, ties and making sure they're not giving up those late goals is also super important.
Right. For me, I want to see them try practicing their off the ball movement and just make the center back pairing, whoever it is, work because it's not their first choice center back pairing. They're obviously
Mhm.
good enough to beat in MLS. They're going to be tough to beat regardless, but you got to make sure that you test them early. And that's just being more dynamic in your movements, trying a few different things, be more comfortable with different levels of buildup, not just through the middle, not just through the wing, mixing that up. And I think that's where these pieces, we got a great collection of offensively talented players, and we just got to continue to work on those areas. And this could cause trouble for the Galaxy team. Abram, what you would you like to see?
I mean, I'm in agreement with you guys. I think that you guys are 100% correct. I think it's obvious, and kind of a problem that it's so obvious, but we're not, doing the things we need to do. I think that Christian Espinosa in the latest press conference mentioned that defenses are able to close them down and mark them out of the game more, and he said when responding to what they have to do to change that movement, and getting the ball up across the field faster. I think if they can put that into practice and do it successfully, I think that we will have a good game. I know that Abogasi uh, particularly enjoys scoring against the Galaxy. I believe they're his favorite opponent to score on. So I think that we should give him a chance again.
Yeah, I think that that would be a great reintroduction to the Galaxy with a repeat goal scorer. Now that's how you stoke the flames of a rivalry there. Um, Also very important to think about. So this month in particular, there's been so many different things going on that makes representation so important. Obviously, we mentioned Pride Month, and also we just want to remind anyone listening that if you haven't already gotten your wristband in supporting the Black Players for Change initiative, please make sure you come to the next Quakes game. It's $5. All proceeds go to that organization, and they do great work throughout the communities in the United States and Canada to ensure that we are making systemic and solid changes that make spaces more equitable on the basis of race for Black and Brown people and all people. And also, it's very important that as we primarily do focus on the San Jose Earthquakes, but we also keep in mind all the great soccer that's going on with the women, both at the NWSL level, at the USLW level with Oakland Soul now. Bay FC is coming. We'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, in this upcoming Galaxy game, Naomi Girma and Kelly O'Hara are going to be firing the siren at the next weekend, this upcoming California Clasico. So both of these phenomenal players will be representing the U.S. women's national team at the World Cup held in Australia and New Zealand. That's going to be a great send off for them, along with their friendly against Wales. And it's going to be great to talk about. So Kylen's currently having laptop difficulties. She'll try to join us when we can, but there we go. Round Q, Kylen's back in. So we're just talking about Kelly O'Hara and Naomi Girma is going to be firing the siren at the Cali Clasico. So tell us a little bit about your excitement level for the World Cup coming up.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I told you guys I was that person that had like the US women's national team poster over my bed throughout like my entire life, growing up, throughout my childhood. So they long have been, heroes of mine. It's an inspiration to see the US women's national team every single World Cup come out and dominate in the way they do. So I'm super excited to see the level of competition. In terms of the team itself, it's going to be interesting getting to see, some young talent and some younger talent on display. I think the last couple of World Cups, we've had a lot of the same cast of characters who've been at the core. Players who've really had that special longevity in terms of playing in 2-3 World Cups, to where now we're starting to get a different crop of younger players. Megan Rapinoe still on the roster, Alex Morgan still on the roster as well. And I'm talking about players who've been, beyond just playing the last World Cup. So you do have some of those experienced vets, but I think it's going to be really exciting to see what some of these young players can do. Naomi Girma is a player coming out of Stanford, outstanding NWSL, both Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year last season, the first player ever to do that. She's going to be super important to the back line. You've got young players like also Sophia Smith coming out of Stanford, another one, a lot of local ties for this U.S. Women's World Cup roster, as there always are, because I feel like Stanford just has this pipeline to the national team. It's insane the level of talent they get here on the farm. But that's another player who, played at Stanford and is going to be super important in the attack, has had an awesome season, back-to-back seasons in the NWSL. So she's a player to keep an eye on in the attack. I'm super excited. It's going to be awesome, though. So they're going to be out at the match on Saturday. And it's not just going to be those two. There's going to be a couple more players just waiting to get the names confirmed. So I know that much, but there's going to be a contingency of the U.S. Women's National Team players who are at the match at the Cali Clasico. You'll see them around. So that's going to be really cool. And then don't forget as well, they play that send-off match at PayPal Park on July 9th against Wales. That's going to be an unbelievable experience. The team's going to be in town doing some training between, during the week and between those dates. So really cool to have them, touching base here in the Bay Area.
Absolutely. So there's so many different opportunities to support women's soccer, along with Oakland Soul. You're going to have that U.S. Women's National Team send-off match against Wales, so that's going to be so exciting for sure. And I'm glad you mentioned Sophia Smith because I watched her completely dominate the Washington Spirit uh, when playing for the Portland Thorns in that recent NWSL game, and that alone gives me a little bit of hope that this could be that three-peat that we were hoping for. It's not going to be easy. I think of the host Australia, England, Spain, Sweden, France, Netherlands. So many great teams, and that's also exciting. It's not just the USA and also Canada. They won the gold at the Olympics. There's so many talented teams at this World Cup that I am so excited that they expanded it to 32 teams because for those heavy hitters, it's going to make the competition even more fierce. And the debutant teams like Philippines and Vietnam as well, it allows them to make that first step and give them the opportunity to compete in the biggest stage as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also important to keep in mind the U.S. is dealing with a number of injuries to some of their biggest stars. Katerina Marcario, a player who was expected to be a key piece in the attack. Becky Sauerbrunn just, discovered that she was going to be out due to a last-minute injury. If you go down the list, there are, quite a few players who were expected to be on the roster. That Sammy Mewis, another one. I feel like there are so many that I've lost track of exactly everyone. Mal Pugh, a player who we've known for a while, but she just got injured. So there also are some of the best stars here in America who aren't going to be playing. So, maybe that opens the door for some better competition. It opens the door for, some of the players on this U.S. roster to step up and to fill some voids. You got someone like Savannah DeMello playing in her first World Cup, being named to the roster after never playing for the U.S. Like, that's crazy. So I think it'll be exciting to see maybe some fresh faces, some people who are getting opportunities in light of some absences, but also, keep in mind some of the U.S. best players, and it's a long list this year, are dealing with injury. So unfortunate to hear about, but also exciting that, some of these young stars may be able to emerge if, the U.S. can come up with some big wins.
And also, if you're concerned about, this not being as talented or in depth as a roster as in years past, here's a few of the healthy scratches off that roster. Players like Tierna Davidson, Sam Coffey, Ashley Hatch. There's a lot of good players in NWSL that because there's just only 23 slots, you can't put them all in. And that just goes to show that USA is still one of the contenders. Whether that means they'll win the World Cup or not, obviously, we don't know. We got to watch the matches. But it's still going to be an exciting time. It's exciting time for a lot of different reasons because the world is getting better. The gap isn't what it was, but we don't want it to be. We want everyone to succeed and have those opportunities, just as we want women who love soccer in the United States to have those opportunities. It was so important that when England won the Euros, that those women were making calls and appeals to schools and organizations in England so that girls could be playing soccer at the school level and there'd be more support there. And now it's easier to watch UEFA Women's Champions League. There's been more coverage for the top flight there. I watched both the men's and women's Manchester United. I'm passionate about them both, and it's a really exciting time. And the first match will kick off in July 20th at keep in mind this is Australia and New Zealand. So For us, it's a reasonable time, 11 p.m. kickoff for New Zealand versus Norway. Perfect for a night owl like you, Abram. Absolutely. So definitely, keep an eye out for the Women's World Cup. We'll definitely be, providing some updates like we do during our podcast with the Gold Cup. And of course, I'll be tweeting about it, and many of our members of the community will be excited about it. And you can talk about it to your heart's content on our Discord server as well. So let's close things off with the Galaxy talk. If there are no further thoughts, let's some score predictions. So I'll go first. I'm going to predict Dos a 0, 2-0 Quakes win. So let's go, Abram. What about you?
I look back at our scores. We haven't won a game with more than a one goal lead in a while. So I'm going to
It's
predict a
beautiful.
1-0 win. I'm
Fair enough.
hoping that we continue the trend, but in a positive way.
Okay. Kylen?
Good prediction. My prediction now, I think this could go a lot of ways. Like 1-0, I feel like is very realistic, but my prediction is going to be 2-1. I think the Galaxy are going to squeak one through on a counterattack. I think that, the Quakes are going to dominate this game. That's my anticipation, or at least I'm going to manifest it. I think they're going to come out strong. I think they're going to score early. I could see them, like I said, giving up a goal in transition because of that, but I think the Quakes are going to come out on top. They need a 2-goal game. I think this team could use it after the last couple of performances. Think they're going to be fired up. So, like I said, if nothing else, I'm going to manifest, but I'm going to anticipate and predict 2-1. I think it'll be close, but I think the Quakes take it.
Yep, there we go. So we're sending our positive vibes to San Jose Earthquakes. This could be a really great game, and we're hoping for a victory. If you're going out to the game in Stanford, sometimes for a Quakes game, especially with the current schedule at PayPal Park, you could get away with doing a few things before coming to the game. No, make sure this is your only thing on your calendar. Come early if you can. Enjoy your time with friends. Make some new friends. Avoid the traffic, and just enjoy the experience. So, Abram, what are you most looking forward to about the game day experience?
About game day, I'm looking forward to the tailgate, definitely. I'm looking forward to stadium food, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing Germany and Bobasi rack up more goals on his tally against LA Galaxy.
Right. What's your favorite tailgate food, Kylen?
Good question. Beer, is that an option? No, I'm just kidding.
We'll ask you what your favorite beer is too.
Yeah, I'm honestly not a huge beer drinker, but it's just one of those things where if you're at a tailgate, like you have to do it.
Right, exactly.
Like as for food, so like I like all stadium foods. Like I'm into like hot dogs, hamburgers. Like I'm not super picky in that regard. So I don't know about favorite tailgate food, but I will say pregame fan fest starts at 3:30. So you mentioned getting there early. Like
Yeah.
highly recommend getting there early. And if you do, like there's going to be something to do. Like it's supposed to be lit. I know they're going to have a beer garden set up, sponsored by Coors. So for those people who do like beer, there will be beer. Even though Stanford
There's
typically
Kylen's answer. Coors is your favorite.
Hey, now I'm a classier lady than that. I'm not doing any light beers. But it'll
there
be a
goes
great
the
environment.
sponsorship. There goes
Yeah, right. Oh, missed opportunity there. But yeah, so the Fan Fest is going to be going on before the match. So really excited to see people turn out early. So there's a perfect excuse to get there early. You don't got to worry about the crowd. You can get parked early and then go hang.
Right. And this is something I experienced yesterday. It was a little bit different, of course, but at the Tom Grassi fan event, for those of you who follow NFL YouTube, you know who Tom Grassi is. But it was just a kaleidoscope of fans across the NFL. Most of us meeting for the first time, and we just talked for hours about our favorite teams, favorite games, favorite players. So definitely use this opportunity. If you're coming with friends, that's great. And also use this opportunity to make some new friends. Of course, we got all our people at the Discord server, both in the San Jose Earthquakes Discord server, Tectonic Takes, and Goal Sided. So there's a lot of different communities within the Bay Area. So definitely see who's going to that game. Maybe coordinate some stuff, and it's going to be a very fun time beyond the 2 hours where the game takes place. And yeah, it's closing in on 4th of July as well. It's summer, the solstice has passed. So just enjoy the sun responsibly. Water and sunscreen. Very important. Yeah.
Always responsibly.
Yeah, definitely. Without sunscreen, I go from ghost to tomato real quick. So I definitely make sure. All right, Kylan, do you have any other thoughts, questions for us? We're really thankful for your time here.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun. I got a jet here in a second. I actually have a co-ed soccer game at
Ooh,
7 o'clock tonight, and it's a little bit of a drive, so I got to get home and get changed. I'm
what
still
position
kicking
are you
it.
playing? Defender?
So I played a six primarily, like in college and post college.
Oh,
I
okay.
played some center back as well. For like this is like an 8v8 co-ed league. I actually play up at
Okay.
Beach Chalet in San Francisco with some friends, so it's always fun. But so since it's 8v8, you're a little bit of everywhere. You know what I mean? So, but that was
Gotcha.
my
Yeah.
position back in the day.
Okay, gotcha. That's what I guess. It's like, okay, cool. We have a former college player. We're going to play a preferred position, and we'll figure out everyone else. But
Yeah,
no, if
true.
it's ABA, it's like go on, be a forward.
Yeah, exactly. No, I've scored a couple goals and it feels good. You know, coming in as a defender, it's a little bit harder when you put one in the back of the net.
Speaking of which, Abram, how did you do at that last Tectonic Takes pickup soccer game?
Evan, you left us high and dry in that game. They
I'm
kicked our
sorry.
butt. They have a Sunday league together. They had chemistry, and I have zero stamina. I got some goals, but after there was some running involved, I was done. I had to take a break. But yeah, it was definitely very fun.
Yeah, I apologize, but you know how it is when you're wedding planning and your fiance texts you, like, you gotta drop some plans sometimes. So, but I am looking forward to being there next time.
Good man, Ivan. Good man.
Thank you. Yeah, shout out to Nicole. There's no chance she's a minute 20 into a soccer podcast because she mostly loves the San Francisco Giants and Buster Posey. But
Still give her
I
the
love you.
shout out. Good man.
Yeah, of course. So, Kylan, where can we follow you?
Yeah, so the good thing is that the name Kylen is not super common. So if you want to find me at any social media platform, I'm literally first and last name, no numbers, no complications. Kylen Mills on Twitter, Kylen Mills on Instagram, Kylen Mills on TikTok. Just my name, very simple. So I'm all over social media, and you can watch also the Quakes Apple TV show. Quakes exclusive is uploaded every Thursday. There's a new episode. If you go to the match for that week, so for example, for the Galaxy, it'll be like under that, like in little tabs. So you can also find me there.
Right. And you can also find her work on the Lockdown Warriors podcast. The latest episode for that just dropped Sunday. Any other projects you want to plug?
MLS Next Pro, you can also find that on Apple TV's MLS Season Pass. I call some of the games. I've been calling Quakes 2 games. If there are any Quakes fans who are watching, you may have heard me. If you haven't yet, you should check out the second team because there are a lot of up and coming stars. Been really fun to watch. Some of the homegrown signings like Cruz Medina getting to develop, getting to start playing at the next level. So it's really cool to see the future of MLS playing in MLS Next Pro. So give it a try if you're interested in seeing the next generation.
Yep. And while the Pac 12 is still a thing, when football season comes around, be sure to watch Callan Mills' coverage of the Pac 12 as well.
Yes, that as well. I'll be doing a lot of Stanford women's soccer as well as Cal women's soccer. So that'll start at the end of August. So if you're, again, soccer fan, those are the top teams in the country here in the Bay
Yeah.
Area. We're very spoiled in terms of the quality of collegiate soccer. So for soccer fans, give it a shout.
Yeah, I mean, 5 Stanford players in the World Cup roster for USA, so definitely very
Exactly.
exciting. We're very blessed here in the Bay Area to have all these great soccer to look forward to, and we're really thankful that we have great people like Kylan Mills working in the soccer community, the sports community here in the Bay Area. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you hanging out. We'll have you again sometime, and have a great rest of your day, and good luck on your 8v8 soccer game.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was so fun being on. Abram, Ivan, you do great work, so keep it up.
All right, thank you so much. And that'll do it for us for this episode of the Tectonic Takes podcast. We'll hopefully have this up for you with several days to spare before the Stanford Cali Clasico. And as always, follow us on Tectonic Takes podcast. We retweet all of our work covering San Jose Earthquakes, Quakes 2, Oakland Roots. Favi's doing a lot of international stuff and tracking some of the messy stuff. Both the Messi with a Y and Messi with an I. And we're always tuned in to the world of soccer. So take care, everyone.